So let me pull this. The way we do this is we'll do uh, an intro. Basically, we'll introduce ourselves. We'll pass it to you to introduce yourself because it's always easier to do that.
Hmm.
Just to be sure, is it Gullison?
It's Gulleson.
All right. Excellent.
And a couple questions.
Hmm.
I do smoke cigars. I can stop smoking for the interview. That's fine. Whatever you
Oh, no,
prefer.
that's good. That's
I
totally
don't
fine
know.
too.
Don't know what your vibe. Some people are like, that's not our vibe.
Yeah, we've had more than a share what we've been doing whiskeys and tequilas and such along the way. So yeah, a cigar is not going to break our vibe in any way, form, or fashion.
You were surprised. Some people get really wigged out about stuff.
Yeah, I know, but those are not the people we care to mess with too much. And since we're sort of like we usually have like a pre-show, so if any of this shows up on the pre-show and you're offended by it, I'm sorry, but that's like we're live and let live people here. So if you're gonna have fun, do it.
Correct.
And if you're bothered by his secondhand smoke, then well, you've got a better computer than I do. So
Exactly. Get it on you.
yep.
I'm just trying to set things up here.
So we do this as a we tend to do this as more like a conversational kind of thing. We'll ask some
Hmm.
questions here and there, but generally it's just like it goes, especially with your background and some of the stuff. Yeah, you've had enough experience, enough things you've done that I have no problem. I have no worries that we're going to get into. We'll roam with the conversation. We'll end up running it. We usually run about an hour, and then we end up cutting it into two roughly half-hour-ish episodes. We'll sort of trim it down a little bit here and there just to make it flow, but not too much. Mostly we keep everything and just try to find a good stopping point for episode one and episode two.
Cool. Sounds
Um,
great.
Other than that, I don't think there's really nothing else of note. So any questions from you before we get started?
No, I'm just trying to figure out how to deal with this filter in the back here. I don't know how it filters everything, but whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't care.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, if you get a little blurred one, that is okay with us. Not a problem.
I was just curious where it came from.
Oh, actually, I'm going to kick that sucker out.
Yeah, kick that guy out. That automatically joins me wherever I go.
There we go.
Huh. I have no idea where to change my filter, but whatever. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Irrelevant to me.
Okay. Well, good. Then we'll pick a better filter. Actually, I don't think we will. We'll just leave it the way it is. But that's how it
Exactly.
is. So, all
Don't worry
right.
about it.
Okay. Sound level's good, Michael.
Yeah, sounds okay.
Okay.
I lowered my mic to maybe offset that. For some reason, the last one you were lower than me, and I had a hard time balancing it.
That could be. I'd gone to like I said, I went to earbuds because I was remote on a couple of those. So, all right. Well, we will dive into this one. Let's see. We're just gonna dive right in. Three, two, one. Well, hello and welcome back. We are continuing our season of Building Better Developers, Developreneur podcast. This is a Building Better Foundation season. Part of it is we're having a lot of conversations this time around. And this episode, once again, we will be doing an interview. We're going to be talking to Dusty Gulleson in a few moments. And if you don't know who he is, that's okay. You will soon enough. For me, I'm Rob Broadhead, one of the founders of Developreneur, Building Better Developers, also the founder of RB Consulting, where we help you basically assess your technology, build a roadmap for success. Good thing, bad thing that has happened to me lately. Spent a week in Vegas. Just got back last night, which was pretty cool. It had been a while since I've been there. A lot of things had gone on. It had grown. There were a lot of cool places to go. It's a place called Tap and Ash that we stumbled across. If you ever want to go to a cool cigar bar kind of thing, their specialty is Nearest Green, which happens to be one of my favorites. So it worked out really good. It happened to be on. Everybody's in town for Monday Night Football, so it was a good time, and that was all great. The downside is getting into Vegas and then leaving Vegas. Everything went wrong basically good. It was nothing big, but it was just little stuff like our flight got moved, just bumped back a little bit, but then we had to go from one end of airport to the other airport. We had like luggage got moved in the wrong place. It was just like one of those things where we're so happy to be there, and then we're so happy to be home. Just like I'm so happy to pass this over to Michael for him to introduce himself.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Malash. I'm one of the co-founders of Developreneur. I'm also the founder of Envision QA, where we help businesses build smarter, stronger software with custom development and rock solid testing. Good thing, bad thing. Well, good thing my wife is back. She was gone for 10 days, and the bad thing was I had to deal with the dogs and the animals for 10 days, and that was very stressful with my workload. So I'm happy she's back, and I'm ready for the holidays.
All right. And now, Dusty, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dusty Gulleson. I'm the CEO of eResources. And do I do the good thing, bad thing too? Is that?
Yeah, you can go right ahead. You will be, usually people don't, but this would be awesome. We'd like to have that
Yeah,
added.
I like it. It's a nice little icebreaker. Let's see. Good thing is, this has been a good year. Just reviewing the last quarter and how this next quarter's shown up, and despite all the ups and downs, things looking good. So looking forward to next year. Going to have a little bit of a slingshot in there. Bad thing. This is when all the travel starts before the end of the year, where everybody tries to squeeze in the last minute projects, resourcing, and all that. Well, it's good, but it's stressful. It's really, at the end of the day, we only have maybe 2-3 weeks left of the year for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, very much so. And that's, yeah, I'm in that. I'm this year, every year I say I'm going to take the last 2 weeks of December off, and stuff gets just slammed in. And I've had too many years where, like Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, I'm still like cranking a few things out just to cover some fire somewhere. And this year I am just desperately again like blocking stuff out and be like, nope, not going to do anything. Not going to be anywhere near, where I can help other than like a couple status calls to just be like, okay, just keep things moving. But we'll see how that
Exactly.
goes. Um,
Exactly.
I want to dive right in because one of the things about your company that I noticed that's I think worthy of talking about is, as you phrase it, it's like what the story gap and why organizations struggle to explain their value. And I
Mhm.
think in particular, this is, or at least that we've discussed this a lot in particular, service organizations, I think in general, but technology probably even more so. Anything that
Mhm.
touches in that, it seems like you're in one of those situations where you could do, people can come to you and say, can you do this? And you'll say, well, yeah,
Mhm.
I can. And early on, you struggle to, you're really just trying to pay
Mhm.
bills and you're surviving. And so you're like, yeah, I'll do
Mhm.
that. I'll do that. I'll do that. And
Mhm.
then you get to a point where you're like, well, that's not really what I'm intending to do. And so
Mhm.
I think this is where you step in and sort of say, like, how do you tackle that? How is it that you maybe, why do they struggle? And then maybe there's some things you can do to help people get unstuck with that.
Yeah, I think by default in the tech field, especially in digital and infrastructure, things are communicated through specs, right? And statements of work are very spec heavy, and really miss the nuance where really the person at the receiving end of whatever solution you're having actually has a different expectation. And so the expectation gap, the way we have at least successfully tried to bridge it from, hey, I want to have, this integration, or I want to have this workflow, or using the story was a really productive way of actually having them come back to what are your outcomes that you're looking for. Tell us the story, what it looks like for you on your day to day. I used to have a saying in our company when I was younger and stupider, still learning. Used to say, always speak to me in bullet points. Tell me exactly what you want to try, just in bullet points. And the problem with that is that you lost the actual nuance in that. And I learned early on that it's the story that where you get the real expectation, and you can boil it down to a simple example of if our MSP division, someone calls in and says something simple as this printer is not working. But the real issue is he wants a great report to be printed out in time for that. That's the real issue. It's not the printer's working. There's a time sensitivity. You find out, hey, what are you trying to accomplish? Instead of the computer's working or the printer's working. We always tell our team that we're customer service people first, and we just happen to do technology. And really learning about the person's expectations, what they're trying to do, what the end result is, what the story looks like. So when we do large, big enterprise projects, $250,000 to $1 million worth of work, we want to look at what's the story of the organization, where are they going, what are they trying to accomplish, and what are all the characters involved in. And that allows us to actually see how what we're doing and how it touches and what the real expectations are, not just plug in this widget. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And now one of the things that I find that is a struggle, I think, especially people come out of the technology world because that very much spoke to me. The whole, hey, speak to me in bullet points, because that is very often they're like, I just tell me what to do.
Hmm.
That's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to go do it. And too often, I think that's part of what we talk about a lot. That's sort of what separates good developers from coders and just
Hmm.
general technologists, is the ability to
Hmm.
actually solve problems.
Correct.
Now, when you're working with, and I guess it's on both sides of the conversation, when whether you're working with the customer or you're training up your people and your staff, is how do you address them? Uh, it's I'm trying to think of the best way to do it, but sort of the forest and the trees aspects of this, because you want the story, because you really need the why to be a Simon Sinek kind of thing. Throw that out there. Is you need the
Sure.
why. You want to know, why do you need this?
Hmm.
Why do you want it? But then there's also a need to dig into those sometimes, and there needs to
Hmm.
be, so it's a, and sometimes I've run into it both sides of it, where it's either a technologist that's like, well, I don't know, I really need those details, so they forget the
Hmm.
story. Or I'm talking to somebody that's a business owner, and they're telling the story. I say, well, I really need some of these
Hmm.
details, and it hurts essentially for them to dig into them sometimes, because it's not a level of detail they want to get into. So it's how do you
Hmm.
marry it, or how do you share how those needs can both be met?
Yeah. Really, I mean, any project really has two parts. It's that initial discovery, and then, of course, the implementation. It's in the discovery where you really invest in conversations and developing the relationship with the end user. We highly, highly recommend actually interviewing everybody that's going to be touched by that project. Talk to them about, how will this change your day to day? Tell me about what you do today. Tell me how long you've been here. What are the challenges you've had? It's really in those conversations and developing relationships with the end users and your partner that you're trying to solve a problem for, that you really get the value in the implementation. Because we've come back to clients and say, actually, after we've interviewed everybody in your discovery, you don't need this. This is a shiny object you thought was solving all your problems. But the real problem is all the shadow data over here are these processes that need to be re-engineered and automated. And you can save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars. I always think about folks that go off, and still do, but used to go off and buy Salesforce thinking that they would sell more, or they would do all these things. The platforms and the tools, they're really not that important. You have to start with people first, and then processes, and then platforms. And a lot of folks, when they think they're solving a problem, they see something and go, what we need is a CRM, or what we need is a CMS, or what we need is this. And actually, what you need is to talk to your folks and go, how can they do their job better? What makes them tick? Do they understand why they're doing this? Because, Simon Sinek's right. Start with why. But the key part of that statement is start with why. It's the start part. There's more to it than just the why. It's why and where and how and where we're going to end up in. What does our company look like in, next year after we implement the solution? What does it look like in 3 years? What do the people's jobs look like? Are they being more productive? Are they able to handle new things? Can we add a new line to something? And there's just a lot of things, and it's really almost everything in life. It's relationships, and story is a really good uh, vehicle to try to have those relationships, talk about them, and see how they can be affected by whatever solution you're building.
So I got a question on that. So as you know, for all the years you've been doing this, and I'm sure you've got some interesting stories in the trenches. What are
Yeah.
some of the, or can you give an example of, how this a great experience getting doing the discovery and implementation, and then follow that with your like worst or kind of your most challenging experience with pulling this information from your customer, your client?
Yes, I have a good and bad with one client that I can think of in my. There's good parts to it and there's bad. And it was a very large association, multi-million dollar, probably about a $80 million organization. And they had disparate service lines. And when they had brought us in, they wanted to talk about just something to do with their infrastructure because of our MSP side. I mean, this is the biggest problem probably in most organizations. Their RFP was not good. And I think, if someone could start a company that just focused on coaching people to build good RFPs, it would solve a bazillion problems, I would think. But we got the RFP and I went down and said, listen, we're not going to build anything off this RFP. We declined the RFP and told them why. And that's been one of our best ways to help get partners. We said, here's what's wrong with your RFP and why we can't actually respond to it. And so when I went down there and we did a story exercise with them over a couple of days with their executive team, walked through stuff. And that was really helpful in uncovering what the real issues were underlying it. They thought it was X, but they took the time. And I think I really challenge every person out there that's hiring a company, take the time to have a company that cares to listen to you, come in and walk you through a process. And, I know, I've been influenced by a lot of story brand, and I've adapted some of that into a discovery process, talking about people's challenges and what their plan is, et cetera. But within that group, there's a subset. You talk about a bad part where that person just refused to talk because they knew change was coming and they did not want to reveal. And usually the folks at the top have a plan, and then the person below them, as soon as they start seeing what the questions are and start having to talk about them, change is probably the worst thing for those folks because they know they will never actually make it, right? If this thing happens, they have their little fiefdom and they want to keep it. So I would say the challenge is getting people to engage. And the reason why it doesn't work is when you don't have leadership at the top that makes people engage. And for some reason, they didn't want to force that solution. Does that answer your question?
It does, which I kind of have a follow-up because I have had recently a similar situation to a project I worked on where we gathered, most people were on board, but of course you have your outliers that don't want to get involved, and it has caused some interesting challenges.
For sure.
Do you have any tips on how to break these people out of their mold to get this information from them, or kind of maybe ease the tension a little bit to help them be more engaged, even if leadership can't really for lack of a better example, lack of leadership where there just isn't a strong enough push to make people get engaged?
Yeah. The folks that don't want to engage is kind of like that scene from Cold Hand Luke where, what we have here is people that don't listen. And so we get what we get, right? And you're going to have probably a good 3 to 5% of people that are immovable. And usually I will sit down with the C-suite, the COO, the CEO, or whoever the champion of that initiative is in the organization. I'll say, listen, you have two choices, really. We either work with them and you encourage them that this is part of their job, that we need to move forward, or it's three choices. Or you replace them. Well, it's really two. You replace them. They either move forward or they get replaced. And I find in a lot of nonprofits and association, the will to do that is harder because the job is a cozier job, generally speaking, in some ways. And that person has friends on the board, and this is politics get involved. So the way to overcome it, though, that we've had success in is it takes time. And I usually tell a C-suite person, hey, we're not getting what we need. Let's not push this through as fast as you think we need to, right? Let's take the time. You almost have to befriend, and you have to help walk the person through where, what their future could look like. And part of that is really understanding what their pain points are and having empathy for that. Because really at the end of the day, they want to know that that they're valued. And if they don't want to be replaced, and you go, okay, what would make you more successful at this job right now, regardless of what we're doing? And you start pulling that out of them, and you talk about what outcome would you like in this job? Like, what would you like to see in this department that you're working on? And generally speaking, over time, you show them that you're not a threat, but you're an enabler to them. It's just like AI conversations with a lot of our clients when we come in to put in an AI solution or agentic automation of some sort. We stress that this is an enablement tool for you. It is not a replacement tool. The only time it becomes a replacement tool is if you resist some kind of, betterment of your solution. Because, especially in a commercial company, C-suite's like, you do it or you don't, you don't be here. So I always take, it's about the relationship, starting a relationship. And we have some really good strategists and project managers and account managers that are really good in coming alongside and positioning ourselves as their partner, not as a third party consultant. We're not the Bobs coming in and saying, hey, what do you say you do around here? We come in there and say, what can we do to make you happier at this job, more efficient at this job, and more successful so that you shine. And so that's really the route to do. It's an empathy relationship side, or you get the C-suite to bring in some pressure.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm going to talk back. I guess we'll flip back a little bit on that RFP comment. As I do find that a lot, is that um, it's like a crutch. It's really an interesting one. Is that like somebody will say there's a combination of that. Is that I think people get a hold of like they'll hear ERP or CRM or something, anything CMS, ABC, XYZ. It doesn't matter. They'll hear something. They'll be like, this is what it is. This is going to solve our problems.
Yep.
Like you said, and then you realize, no, it's not. And there's been RFPs. I don't know how many times I've seen RFPs, big and small, that they say, this is what we want, and this is what we want to build, and these are the requirements. And you look at them and say, no, that is like what you say you want to build, and what you're laying out is how to build it.
Yeah.
Especially now, I'm wondering if you've seen this, is where I'm going with the actual question. Is like, have you seen this? Because I have in the last few months. Have you seen this, like, I guess, getting worse in the last 6 months to a year or something like that, where people are now, I'm seeing people are using AI chats to go generate requirements for something, but they're not asking the right questions, basically. And so AI gives them answers, but not the way they need to, it's not something that's actually helpful.
Yeah. I think a good RFP, here's the hallmarks of RFPs that we'll look at seriously. One, they have a business case clearly articulated prior to actually asking for the solution they're looking for. So they identify the problem, they identify what the outcome they're looking for. And then if they do not have this, we will not respond. They have a budget that they want to apply to it. If you don't have a budget, you're not serious about solving a problem. And that's really where it starts. So a good business case that articulates the problem clearly, where they want to see the outcome, and the business. Now, that's a good start. That's a start to talk. We actually do RFPs for other things in our company, and we do that. But we also want to say, we would like a discovery for what we want. We want to see, and we'll pay for a discovery. I just did it yesterday. If you don't want a paid discovery, you're not serious about the solution, because there's no company in the world that will understand your RFP and be able to deliver on it without them sitting down with you and having a number of conversations, getting a bit of data. And sometimes it's a little bit, sometimes it's a lot. But we really tell clients that you should budget anywhere from 10 to 15% for a discovery out of your budget for a company that you like, that you think will fit the bill. And then that comes back and you do a Moscow, must-haves, like to have and don't need to have. And that's what you want back from a discovery, where they price out that so you can see where you're going. But I see a ton of AI-generated RFPs, a lot of cut and paste. And I know because a lot of them are contradictory, and they don't think it's contradictory. And they really should have either a consultant or RFP person help them develop that RFP if they're serious about making it and getting serious responders. The quality RFP is going to generate the quality of the responders that you have. And the last thing you want someone to do is giving you, yeah, that's your budget, we can do it. And then I just saw this with a CRM implication. They brought us in to do a needs analysis and create an RFP for this. We sent it out, and one of the vendors responded, yep, we can do this. And we told the client, do not hire them. They have not done their own discovery. They have not articulated that they understand your business need very clearly in their response. But of course, the client's like, it's the cheapest one. I'm like, of course it's the cheapest one.
Yeah.
Of course. That's what it means. And so, any company worth its salt will invest in the RFP process and the discovery process.
So when you're working with these companies, have you, and if they don't have an RFP in place or they're still struggling to figure out
Yeah.
what their problem is, do you have like a checklist or do you have any type of documentation or suggestions
Hmm.
to provide them? Uh,
100%.
okay. Can
Yeah.
you give some
So
examples?
we'll have companies going and say, hey, can you help us with this? They don't have an RFP. That's fine. We'll do a discovery. And what we tell them is you can take the discovery and you can have us build an RFP for you and you can shop it out. You don't have to use us, or we can use it and respond to the said RFP. I said it's a little bit of conflict of interest, but we want you to be able to see what you truly need first. Because if we don't know what you truly need, we're not going to be able to build it. So a discovery process if you don't have the RFP, and have a company that's really good at that and presenting a nice roadmap, an understanding, a schedule. Because there's nothing more glorious than receiving an RFP that actually has a Gantt chart and a budget. You're just like, that's amazing. We love these people. It might not be right, but they understand what it takes to go forward, right? Especially on enterprise type projects that are, $500,000.
So on the flip side of that, so if you're advising these companies looking for people responding to the RFPs, how do you help them weed out the good from the bad?
Sure. So when we did this one project with this client where we reviewed a number of CRM vendors for them, we created a requirements document that tied back to the business case and to the story and said, here are the requirements that need to be implemented in this solution for the CRM to work correctly. And then we actually created a grading matrix for that for them. And so when we interviewed, I don't know how many, when I say we, I didn't do any of this work, our strategists and AMs did. When they reviewed it, they could actually create a checklist and they create notes next to each one based on the answers that they were given. And so we could have a grading system. And so the client was, here, this one's, 92% capable of solving this. These 8% issues have to be resolved. This one's 80%. This one's 70%. And so you have eyes wide open. So you might want to choose the 70% because of the 70%, those are the majority of the things that are really in your Moscow are key. They got the must-haves, which are 70%. The other ones, we can phase two them. And we usually have an 80-15-5 rule we try to tell our clients is that you want to try to get 80% of what you want done in the first engagement part. Because you're not going to get 100% perfectly done, but don't make the perfect the enemy of good. So let's try to aim for 80%. Things that are 15% of the time that you need, let's phase two those and see if they actually really are needed or you're going to accommodate some. If it's 5% of the time, try not to accommodate education. That's where the price goes up significantly. So we try to have that grading matrix. We tie it again. There's a lot of science, but a lot of art in that. And it gives people, especially our clients, a good perspective and eyes wide open on what to expect. And when that translates into a SOW, it works out perfectly, right? And you can say, oh, the SOW aligns perfectly with what we're expecting.
Yeah, I think that's I've run into more than a few companies. It's gotten better, but especially in early years, you had to educate them a little bit to say like this is part of the process. This is not like a throwaway. This is not like you're going to go do this and then all that stuff is lost and you start all over again. It's like this is
Yep.
part of doing
Yep.
it right. One of the things I've run into, I'm wondering how often you've run into this. That's I find an interesting and talks a little bit about our earlier conversation about where you go in and you sit down with people and you see what they do and what their pain points are. And sometimes that evolves as the relationship evolves. They're a little more open about like some of the pain points
Mhm.
or some of their little, side apps that they use and things like that to
Mhm.
get the job done. So we do the same thing as we'll do an RFP and it's sort of like a straight up, however we do it, you just like, 1 to 10, what is it? Do you have it? And then behind that, there's a secondary sort of a matrix that prioritizes stuff, like you said. So you're going to say like, these are things we need. These are things we want to have. These would be nice to have. One of the things we found several times is that you trust the process and you build it out and you get down to, usually it's actually pretty easy. I found that even with dozens or hundreds of people responding, you can actually get it down pretty quick with something like that to say, okay, we're gonna go talk to 10. But I've found more than a few times where you do that and you get into the bottom list, you start getting into that short list. and you get pushback from the customer. They're saying, well, well, this guy got a 90 and that guy got an 80, but we really like what the 80 is providing better. And it's,
Hmm.
which to me is like, okay, well, maybe we didn't prioritize these things right. I mean, some of it is like,
No,
I like that guy or that gal better than the other one, which I
sure.
totally get that. But sometimes it is. It's at least I've seen that sometimes. I wonder if that's something you've seen as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I appreciate that, Rob, because I think a lot of times in those matrices, it's the nuance that starts coming out. That's why we have that notes right next to whatever the grade is, and we go, this person graded low on the delivery of this, but I think they understand the holistic scope better based on that point. The other thing that's really great on the discovery is, and when you look at an RFP that's responded to after you've done that discovery, the ones that ask the good questions, the ones that are more question based responses in RFP, did you check about this? What about that? I feel like there's some shadow data over here that should be incorporated into this solution. So that's one of the ways that, while we still grade it, we give recommendations based on the holistic view. Like, while they don't have the experience in doing X, Y, Z, that doesn't matter as much as them understanding exactly what you're trying to accomplish because they solve these problems. Yeah, this is where it goes back to the art and the relationship, right? If the vendor actually has a comprehension of what you're trying to accomplish and the story and where you're going and writes themselves into that story very well and provides themselves as the guide to you very well, they're a better vendor at the end of the day. I remember a story about, I think it was in Harvard Business Review about, what's the best CEO or the best employee, and it's not the A student, it's not the B student, it's the C student. The C student actually understands how to get from point A to point B quicker and more efficiently, and can see through the BS and doesn't, dot every dot. And the reason why is, at the end of the day, that they know the long term outcome, what will help them get to the end point more efficiently and actually address the root issues. Whereas the A student, trying to be perfect in everything,
Mhm.
that's you're going to be stuck. And I think it's for the companies that are the grinding companies that have the grit, that go through it day in, day out, and aren't all flashy about everything going perfect. They're the ones that I really admire because they actually know how to get from the point A to point Z, and they know it's going to take a hard time, and they're not trying to blow smoke. They just going to grind right through there. I have a lot of respect for those.
And that is where we're going to pause this first part of our interview with Dusty Gulleson. And it keeps going. It's really a great time. First, I want to thank him again for his time and jumping on and having just really, it's one of these that has been a great conversation. It's one of these things that, like, when you are surrounding yourself and getting input from people that have done the things that you're looking to do, you get a lot of great ideas. There's a lot of stuff that comes out of it that is, especially when you let them just talk, that is better than just throwing questions out there. You can hammer people with questions all day long, but there's going to be, to me, this is one of those where there's going to be things you don't know what you don't know. And I think some of those things come out. And there was along the way, I was taking a few notes as well. Some things like, oh, yeah, I should do that. Oh, yeah, I'd forgotten about that. Um, Bonus material for those of you guys out there. We talk about RFPs. We do have, and I think I don't know if it's available. I'd have to figure out where it's at right now, but shoot us an email at info@developreneur.com we do have an RFP course. I think there's actually like an intro and then a more advanced one. A lot of the stuff we talk about here, it's in there. Spend a couple hours investing. We'll, in walking through it, and we would be happy to talk about it. We've got some templates and things like that. Some of the things that we touch on here, but then we also go a little deeper about how to ask some of the questions and some areas that you need to make sure you cover when you're putting together an RFP. So it was just awesome for that to come in. So we will do a little bit of shameless self promotion for that as well. But let us know if you need any help with that because it is critical. It is so many projects. The RFP did not go well. And that's honestly why RB Consulting exists, is to correct all of the bad starts and find ways to fix those. And at Developreneur, that's why we help you will be a better developer if you can understand these sorts of things. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you. Go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time.